Good morning. Firstly, I would like to thank the Management Committee of Buddhist Gem Fellowship, BGF, for inviting me to try and clear up some misconceptions about Kamma. I have been teaching Abhidhamma for 15 years, and each year Kamma is the topic that generates the most interest. Today, I'll discuss Kamma by referencing more than 20 suttas and also adding some simplified details from the Abhidhamma. Okay, let's get started. A friend heard that I was going to give a talk on Kamma and sent me a WhatsApp message with this image. It made me chuckle. I started to prepare for this presentation by Googling Kamma, and here are some of the things that I found on the internet. The bird eats insects, and when the bird dies, the bird's body is eaten by insects. This is the law of Kamma. One tree can create 1,000 matchsticks, and one matchstick can destroy 1,000 trees. This is the law of Kamma. After making a donation, you go home and find some money that you forgot that you had. This is the law of Kamma. Actually, none of these involve Kamma. The tree and the matchstick quote makes no sense to me at all. There is an unbelievable amount of misinformation about Kamma on the internet. Little wonder there are so many misconceptions about Kamma. I enjoy Dilbert comics. People make jokes about Kamma, but now it's time to get serious. Let me share some misconceptions about Kamma that were in an email that I received a few months ago. Can I say that a toxic work environment with politics and hypocrites is the result of past unwholesome Kamma? If so, does that mean that I have to continue to endure until all this Kamma ripens? If I were to leave now, does this mean that I am running away from my past Kamma and thus still have to pay somehow? So how did I reply to this email? Your work environment has nothing to do with Kamma. The toxicity of your work environment may be the result of decisions made by you, decisions made by others, or the nature of the company, the industry, your profession. Nothing to do with Kamma. People often blame Kamma as an excuse not to look more deeply into the true root cause of the problem. I am going to read that last sentence again because it is so important. People often blame Kamma as an excuse not to look more deeply into the true root cause of the problem. My reply continued. You have two options. You can wish that your world had less problems, good luck with that, or you can develop and train the mind so that its reaction to inevitable problems is not so negative. I know, spiritual development is not easy. These comments were inspired by Shantideva, an 8th century Buddhist scholar who wrote, "Where would I possibly find enough leather with which to cover the surface of the earth? But just the leather on the soles of my shoes is equivalent to covering the earth with it. Likewise, it is not possible for me to restrain the external course of things. But should I restrain my own mind, what would be the need to restrain all else?" We all know that the path of life has many sharp stones, and you can't just wish them away. The point at which you come in contact with these sharp stones is the mind. Protect yourself by guarding the mind. Guarding the mind means practicing mindfulness in daily life. Bhante Agachita recently gave a talk on practicing mindfulness in daily life here at BGF. You can find the video on YouTube. I continued. The Buddha said that the idea that one has to endure until all Kamma ripens is a wrong view. It was a view held by the Jains. Of course, leaving your job now would have many implications, no paycheck, etc. But none of these implications have anything to do with Kamma. This email showed many misunderstandings about Kamma. Now let me change a few words. Can I say that having a frustrating spouse is the result of past unwholesome Kamma? If so, does that mean that I have to continue to endure until all this Kamma ripens? If I were to leave now, does this mean that I am running away from my past Kamma and thus still have to pay somehow? In other words, am I repaying a karmic debt that I owe to my spouse from a previous lifetime? Though I've never received it in an email, I have heard people express these feelings. My reply would be basically the same. Who you choose to marry has nothing to do with Kamma. People often blame Kamma as an excuse not to look more deeply into the true root cause of the problem. You could wish that your spouse were ideal, and good luck with that, or you can train yourself to guard your senses. Again, train yourself to guard your senses means practicing mindfulness in daily life. It is not your fate or destiny to just suffer with a frustrating spouse, but leaving your spouse has many implications, and these implications have nothing to do with Kamma. Let's start to look at a Buddhist understanding of Kamma by looking at a pre-Buddhist understanding of Kamma to provide some context for the Buddha's teachings. The Vedas are a large body of religious texts, some parts of which predate the Buddha by more than 1,000 years. In the Vedas, Kamma meant a ritual action such as animal sacrifice. The Upanishads are philosophical texts that are additions to the Vedas. Some of the Upanishads also predate the Buddha. In the Upanishads, Kamma took on an ethical quality, and this led to the belief that rites and rituals contributed to spiritual development. So how did the Buddha define Kamma? It is intention that I call Kamma. For having willed, one acts by body, speech, or mind. The little monk means that this is a very important point. Watch out for him on other slides. The Buddha redefined Kamma to mean intention or volition. He took a word that previously had meant something physical and redefined it to mean something mental. Kamma comes from the intention behind the thought, the intention behind speech, the intention behind action. Let's look at some of the factors that make Kamma strong. A mother sees a monk on alms round, Pindapat, and brings her child outside. The mother and the child both perform the same action, offering 1 spoon of rice to the monk. We will look at a number of factors that might impact the strength of intention of the mother and the strength of intention of the child. The mother's action was spontaneous, whereas the child's action was prompted or induced by the mother. Based on this factor, the mother had the stronger intention. The mother gave the spoon of rice with a joyful, pleasant feeling. The child's feeling was more neutral. Based on this factor, again, the mother had the stronger intention. The mother's motivation was based on the right thing to do. In other words, spiritual development. This is giving with understanding. The child gave the spoonful of rice because it was a traditional thing to do. This is blind giving, giving without understanding. Based on this factor, once again, the mother had the stronger intention. The mother reflects joyfully before, during, and after the giving, and this created what is called superior Kamma. The child hesitated before giving, was distracted during giving, or later regretted giving, and this created what is called inferior Kamma. In a sutta, the Buddha asked his 7-year-old son, "What is a mirror for?" His son answered, "For reflection." The Buddha continued, "You should reflect before performing an action, reflect during performing an action, and reflect after performing an action." So in summary, the same action was done by the mother and the child, but the mother's wholesome Kamma was much stronger than the child's wholesome Kamma. You need to look past the physical action to the underlying intention. For example, if someone makes a donation to gain recognition, this creates bad Kamma. As another example, whether or not a monk eats the food or wears the robe that was offered has no impact on the Kamma of the donor. Intention creates a Kamma seed, waiting for the right conditions so that it can ripen and have an effect. But most people's misconceptions are around the effects of Kamma. These misconceptions are not new. The Buddha asked, if someone murders because of past Kamma, or if someone murders because of a creator God, or if someone murders because of random chance, then how can there be moral responsibility? Even today, some people think that everything is due to past Kamma. This is fatalism. This is wrong. There are 3 effects of Kamma: rebirth, momentary sense experience, and some living parts of the body. Most people think of Kamma as being vague and general, but the early Buddhist teachings were very specific about the scope of Kamma. But they were not specific about the precise details of how Kamma works. The precise effects of Kamma is an unconjecturable, that is not to be conjectured about, that would bring madness and vexation to anyone who conjectured about it. I will try not to bring madness and vexation to you. Later Buddhists ignored this warning. There are 2 later books, the Petavatu and the Vimanavatu, focusing on, because of this specific action, this rebirth took place. The suttas are not specific about the cause and effect of Kamma. Influenced by traditional folk beliefs, later Buddhists also added new concepts such as group Kamma. Here is a sutta that makes it clear that there is no such thing as group Kamma. That evil karma of yours was neither done by your mother, nor done by your father, nor done by your brother, nor done by your sister, nor done by your friends and companions, nor done by your kinsmen and relatives, nor done by the devas. That evil karma was done by you yourself, and you yourself will experience its effect. This sutta says that karma is always individual, never group. Some commentaries compiled 900 years after the Buddha include examples of group karma, and this is a misconception that continues to exist until today. This sutta also says that karma cannot be passed down across generations. This is another misconception that I've heard. Now, let's look at a sutta that describes how karma works. There is the case where a trifling evil deed done by a certain individual takes him to hell. There is the case where the very same sort of trifling deed done by another individual is experienced in the here and now and for the most part barely appears for a moment. So here it is clear that the effect of karma is either rebirth or momentary sense experience. Takes him to hell is rebirth. A momentary sense experience arises in the here and now and for the most part barely appears for a moment. There is an individual who is undeveloped in contemplating the body, undeveloped in virtue, undeveloped in mind, undeveloped in discernment, restricted, small-hearted, dwelling with suffering. A trifling evil deed done by this sort of individual takes him to hell. So, for a spiritually undeveloped person, the trifling evil deed leads to rebirth in hell. There is an individual who is developed in contemplating the body, developed in virtue, developed in mind, developed in discernment, unrestricted, large-hearted, dwelling with the immeasurable. A trifling evil deed done by this sort of individual is experienced in the here and now and for the most part barely appears for a moment. So for a spiritually developed person, the trifling evil deed leads to a momentary sense experience. A salt crystal in a small cup makes the water undrinkable, and a salt crystal in the river Ganges has no effect. In the same way, a trifling evil deed takes one individual to hell, and the same sort of trifling evil deed done by another individual is experienced in the here and now and for the most part barely appears for a moment. So the message of this sutta is to develop ourselves spiritually so those trifling evil deeds that we do every day have minimal impact. But how can a small cause sometimes have a big effect? Here is an analogy to explain. A very small action, pressing a light switch, can sometimes have a very big effect of lighting up an entire room. But for this to happen, there needs to be a lot of prior supporting conditions, such as a power station built, transmission lines erected, building wiring installed, and a light bulb put in place. You may think that karma is sometimes unfair, but supporting conditions are not always apparent. For example, if a baby dies, you may ask, what did they do to deserve such a short life? We cannot see the supporting conditions. Now, let's talk about momentary sense experience according to the suttas. Dependent on I in visible forms, I consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as a condition, there is feeling. What one feels, one perceives or labels in the mind. What one perceives, one thinks about. What one thinks about, one proliferates. For example, I see a patch of color, and this causes me to perceive a flower. I think about flowers, and this leads to proliferating, being lost in memories and planning, in a fantasy world. Actually, we spent much of our life proliferating, completely out of touch with the reality of the moment. Now, let me present this sutta as a diagram. Dependent on I and visible forms, I consciousness arises. According to the Abhidhamma, visible form is actually a small patch of color. Today, scientists agree and tell us that there are special cells in the retina called cones that are sensitive to red, green, and blue light. According to scientists, each small patch of color is about the size of my thumbnail when my arm is fully extended. So at one instant, the eye sees a small patch of color, and then the mind glues all these small patches of color together to create a visual scene. Dependent on I and visible forms, I consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. With contact as a condition, there is feeling. What one feels, one perceives, or labels in the mind. What one perceives, one thinks about, and what one thinks about, one proliferates. The linkage to Kamma is not mentioned in this sutta. I consciousness is the effect of past Kamma. It is a momentary sense experience. The reaction to what is seen, the perceiving, the thinking about, and the proliferating is what creates new Kamma. The sutta repeats the sequence for each of the 6 senses. Nose consciousness is another momentary sense experience. The nice odor did not come from Kamma, but rather it is a condition for a past wholesome Kamma to ripen, a momentary sense experience. Imagine yourself surrounded by a cloud of Kamma seeds waiting for suitable conditions to ripen. The smell of coffee is a condition for some past wholesome Kamma to ripen. So when I experience the smell or taste of coffee, I'm using up a past wholesome Kamma seed, but that's worth it. The bad odor did not come from Kamma, but rather it is a condition for a past unwholesome Kamma to ripen, another momentary sense experience. Imagine yourself surrounded by a cloud of Kamma seeds waiting for suitable conditions to ripen. The smell of garbage is a condition for some past unwholesome Kamma to ripen. This is a subtle point, but an important one. The sense object itself, the coffee odor or the garbage odor, generally arises because of conditions other than Kamma. The experiencing of the sense object is an effect of Kamma, an opportunity for some past Kamma to ripen. Coffee odor allows some past wholesome Kamma to ripen as a momentary sense experience. Garbage odor allows some past unwholesome Kamma to ripen as a momentary sense experience. We are surrounded by uncountable Kamma seeds, all waiting for suitable conditions to ripen. But if you guard the sense doors, then you can minimize your reaction to whatever odor arises and minimize the new Kamma that is created through liking or disliking the odor. The same sequence applies for body sensations. Holding hands with someone is a pleasant physical sensation, an opportunity for some past wholesome Kamma to bring about its effect. Similarly, a painful object does not come from Kamma, but rather it is a condition for a past unwholesome Kamma to ripen. Physical pain is a momentary sense experience. Actually, it's the mental pain before and after the physical pain that creates a lot of suffering for us. Pain is natural. Suffering is optional. Now, let's look at a sutta involving physical pain and Kamma. I think you know the story of the mass murderer Angulimala. This event takes place after Angulimala had become a monk. Then Venerable Angulimala, early in the morning, having put on his robes and carrying his outer robe and bowl, went into Savatthi for alms. Now at that time, a clod thrown by one person hit Venerable Angulimala on the body. A stone thrown by another person hit him on the body. And a potsherd thrown by still another person hit him on the body. So Venerable Angulimala, his head broken open and dripping with blood, his bowl broken, and his outer robes ripped to shreds, went to the Blessed One. Now the commentary explains that villagers were throwing things to try and scare off dogs. They were not trying to hurt Angulimala. The throwing of things and the things hitting Angulimala had nothing to do with Angulimala's Kamma. The Blessed One saw him coming from afar, and on seeing him said to him, "Bear with it, Brahmin, bear with it. The fruit of the Kamma that would have burned you in hell for many years, many hundreds of years, many thousands of years, you are now experiencing in the here and now." In other words, the Buddha is saying that Angulimala's past actions will not result in rebirth, but rather in a momentary sense experience of pain. By that point, Angulimala was spiritually developed, and this is why his past actions only resulted in a momentary experience of pain. Let's summarize the Salt Crystal Sutta and the Angulimala Sutta. So for the spiritually undeveloped person, killing leads to hell. This is rebirth. And for the spiritually developed person, killing leads to cuts and bruises. This is a momentary sense experience. Everyone is surrounded by a cloud of Kamma seeds waiting for suitable conditions to ripen. Spiritually undeveloped and spiritually developed are examples of supporting conditions that can influence how past Kamma has the opportunity to ripen. Again, supporting conditions are not always apparent. This paragraph appears at the beginning of the Salt Crystal Sutta. Bhikkhus, if one were to say thus, a person experiences karma in precisely the same way that he created it, in such a case there could be no opportunity for spiritual development. The point that the Buddha is making is, you cannot say, if I kill in this life, I will be killed in my next life. This is a common misconception about karma. Actually, sometimes karma only leads to cuts and bruises. Now let's look at a sutta describing karma causing rebirth in more detail. The commentary provides the background story to this sutta. Todia was a very rich Brahmin who was also very stingy. He refused to support monks and insulted people who did support monks. When Todia died, his only son Suba inherited Todia's mansion and wealth. Todia was so attached to his mansion that he was reborn as a watchdog living in the mansion. One day, the Buddha was on alms round and stopped in front of the mansion. The watchdog started barking, and the Buddha gently said, Todia, not only now, but also in your previous birth did you treat me in this way. This is why you were born as a dog. The dog immediately ran to hide at the back of the house. When Suba returned later, he was surprised that the dog did not rush out to greet him. The servants told Suba what the Buddha had said to the dog, and Suba was furious. Brahmins are very proud people, and dogs were considered to be a disgusting animal. So it was a serious insult to say Todia had been reborn as a dog. Suba went to scold the Buddha. The Buddha calmed Suba's mind and said, Is it not true that your father buried some treasure somewhere on your property? Suba confirmed that this was true. The Buddha said, Go home and feed the dog well. Just before the dog falls asleep, whisper in its ear, Father, where is the treasure? When the dog takes you to the treasure, this will prove that the dog was your father. Suba was happy. If the dog did not reveal the treasure, Suba could discredit the Buddha. If the dog did reveal the treasure, Suba would be much richer. So Suba went home and followed the Buddha's instructions. Of course, the dog led Suba to the treasure. This caused Suba to wonder about the workings of karma, and so Suba decided to approach the Buddha with his questions about karma. One meets with short-lived and long-lived people, sick and healthy people, ugly and beautiful people, insignificant and influential people, poor and rich people, low-born and high-born people, stupid and wise people. What is the reason? What is the condition why superiority and inferiority are met with among human beings? In other words, what is the cause behind a fortunate rebirth or an unfortunate rebirth? The Buddha explained that it was karma. Beings are owners of their karma, heirs of their karma. They originate from their karma, are bound to their karma, and have karma as their refuge. Owners of their karma means that karma follows us from life to life. Heirs of their karma means that we inherit karma from past existence. Originate from karma means that we are born because of karma. Bound to their karma means that we are never separated from our karma. Karma as their refuge means that we must rely on karma for future rebirths. Suba said that he did not understand and asked the Buddha to explain. Now you may wonder why a skilled teacher such as the Buddha would intentionally give a confusing answer. The Buddha wanted Suba to ask for an explanation to reduce Suba's arrogance. The Buddha often took this approach when dealing with arrogant Brahmins. The Buddha said, A person who kills is reborn in an unhappy destination, or if reborn as a human, they have a short life. A person who refrains from killing is reborn as a god, a deva, or if reborn as a human, they have a long life. So if the karma of killing causes rebirth, you are reborn in an unhappy destination. However, if some other wholesome karma causes you to be reborn as human, then the past karma of killing can shorten your lifespan. This chart summarizes the Buddha's detailed response. We have already mentioned these first two items. If killing acts as rebirth linking karma, then there is rebirth in the woeful plains. If some other wholesome karma acts as rebirth linking, causing rebirth as a human, then the unwholesome karma associated with killing can shorten the human lifespan. If abstaining from killing acts as rebirth linking karma, then there is rebirth in the deva realm. If some other wholesome karma acts as rebirth linking, causing rebirth as a human, then the wholesome karma associated with abstaining from killing can extend the human lifespan. The Buddha explained that the past karma associated with harming others could impact one's health in the next human existence. The past karma associated with anger could impact one's beauty in the next human existence. The past karma associated with being spiritually oriented could impact one's intelligence in the next human existence. Actually, the sutta does not talk about being spiritually oriented. It talks about asking spiritual questions of a monk. At the time of the Buddha, asking monks was the only way to learn about spiritual topics, and so that's why I called this being spiritually oriented. This reminds me of a Dhamma speaker's joke. If you don't ask questions after my Dhamma talk, then you may be reborn as stupid. Next, the Buddha explained that the past karma associated with abstaining from envy could cause you to be reborn into an influential family in the next human existence. The past karma associated with being generous could cause you to be reborn into a rich family in the next human existence. Finally, the past karma associated with being respectful could cause you to be reborn into a noble family in the next human existence. You can see that karma can influence the rebirth family situation. For example, the family that you were born into or the country that you were born into. The Abhidhamma expands on this by listing 4 classifications of karma: productive karma, supportive karma, obstructive karma, and destructive karma. Productive karma creates life at the instant of rebirth and supports life throughout the existence. Supportive karma and obstructive karma impact some living parts of the body or the rebirth family situation. Destructive karma cuts short the life faculty. It cancels the productive karma, causing death. Speaking of destructive karma, I was recently asked about the role of karma in a car accident and in an airplane crash. There are always many causes, many supporting conditions for every effect. Perhaps I had not been maintaining my car properly and allowed the brakes to wear down. Perhaps the road conditions were bad and it was raining, reducing my visibility. These 2 causes are external physical conditions that are obviously not linked to my karma. The next 3 are conditions related to my mind. Perhaps I was sleepy because I went to bed late the night before and had just finished a large meal. We will discuss the root decision later, but for now, please accept that decisions are not based on karma. Also, perhaps I was distracted by a song that came on the radio. Though these conditions are related to my mind, they are not related to my karma. The driver ahead of me was a new driver and was jittery behind the wheel. Finally, 100 meters ahead, a chicken crossed the road. The driver ahead of me quickly slammed on his brakes, but I was not able to stop in time before hitting him. These last 2 conditions are related to other beings, obviously not linked to my karma. Why did the chicken cross the road? Many answers to that question, but none are related to karma. Now, the police report will likely blame the chicken. Chicken crossed road, first driver stopped quickly, second driver hit first driver. The accident is not caused by karma. Everything that happens to us arises because of conditions, many conditions. If we blame karma, we become fatalistic and blind ourselves to things over which we do have control. If we blame karma, we miss opportunities to learn from what has happened to us. For example, if I'd maintained my car better, if I'd not driven while sleepy, if I had not allowed myself to become distracted, the accident might not have happened. This is an important point. Living your life with mindfulness and good judgment can help you to avoid a lot of problems, and it has nothing to do with karma. Though the accident is not caused by karma, it might create an opportunity for some past unwholesome karma to ripen as body consciousness that experiences pain. Some past unwholesome karma came from the cloud of karma seeds that were waiting for suitable conditions to ripen. Though the accident is not caused by karma, it might create an opportunity for a more serious type of unwholesome karma to ripen. It might be a condition for a destructive karma to arise, karma that cuts off the life faculty in the living parts of the body, in less technical terms, death. Now, let's talk about an airplane crash. In July 2014, a surface-to-air missile shot down MH17. This tragedy, which had nothing to do with karma, was a condition for an unwholesome, destructive karma seed to ripen for 298 people, cutting short their lives. Each of these people had their own personal cloud of karma seeds waiting for suitable conditions to ripen. There is no group karma. Normally, I am asked about MH370. We still don't know the cause of the MH370 disappearance, but I am sure that it had nothing to do with karma. We all have destructive karma seeds waiting for suitable conditions to ripen. Focus on your spiritual development. We don't know how much time we have left. Now, let's turn to a cheerier topic, the Abhidhamma. Each sutta was delivered to a specific audience for a specific purpose. It provides one small window into the Buddhist teachings. If you were to glue these small windows together, eliminate the duplication, eliminate the references to people and places, extract and organize key doctrinal terms, you would eventually arrive at the Abhidhamma, the underlying ecosystem upon which the suttas are based. The suttas came first, and the Abhidhamma was developed soon afterwards based on the suttas. The commentaries were compiled hundreds of years later, using much earlier materials. According to the Abhidhamma model of the mind is a continuous stream of mind moments. Each mind moment contains consciousness and mental factors. Consciousness is just awareness of an object. Mental factors cover other aspects of the mind, such as concentration, energy, attachment, compassion, and so on. Each mind moment lasts for a billionth of a second before it falls away, allowing the next mind moment to arise. It may seem that we see and think about what we're seeing at the same time, but actually these are two types of processes, a sense door process and a mind door process arising in quick succession. Seeing is an example of a sense door process. Examples of a mind door process include perceiving, thinking about, and proliferating. After each sense door process, there can be thousands of mind door processes. Many life continuum mind moments fill in the gaps between processes. Within the stream of mind moments, there are 5 types of mind moments. The first type of mind moment are the Kamma creating mind moments. I show these mind moments with an upward arrow to indicate that they create new Kamma. There are 2 kinds of Kamma creating mind moments that create wholesome Kamma and mind moments that create unwholesome Kamma. Once Kamma has been created, it waits for suitable conditions to ripen. These Kamma creating mind moments contribute to the cloud of Kamma seeds that surround us. When there are suitable conditions for one of these Kamma seeds to ripen, the effect of past Kamma arises. I show these mind moments with a downward arrow to indicate that they are the effect of past Kamma ripening. I show them in gray rather than black because these mind moments are passive and weak. As you can see, there are 2 kinds of mind moments that are the effect of past Kamma: sensing mind moments and life continuum mind moments. Sensing mind moments are momentary sense experience in the here and now, and for the most part, barely appearing for a moment. An example of a sensing mind moment is the eye consciousness mind moment that arises at the retina when there is a working eye in visible form. Life continuum mind moments arise at the moment of rebirth and repeatedly between processes. Life continuum mind moments are associated with a specific realm of existence. The remaining 2 types of mind moments are unrelated to Kamma. They neither create new Kamma, nor are they the effect of past Kamma. Because they are unrelated to Kamma, they have no arrow, neither an up arrow nor a down arrow. These are the decision-making mind moments. As we will see, the sense door decision mind moment determines if the mind will next process a visible object, a sound, a smell, a taste, or a tactile sensation. The mind door decision mind moment determines if the mind will next generate wholesome Kamma or will next generate unwholesome Kamma. It's a very important mind moment. That's why it's colored gold. I will now present the 5 types of mind moments in a chart, organized according to Kamma and according to roots. Classifications in the Abhidhamma put a lot of emphasis on Kamma. Roots will be discussed later, but in general there are 3 unwholesome roots, attachment, aversion, and delusion, and 3 wholesome roots, non-attachment, non-aversion, and understanding. The mind moments that create new unwholesome Kamma have unwholesome roots, such as attachment, aversion, and delusion. I call this the danger zone, because the Kamma seeds that these mind moments create are dangerous. The mind moments that create new wholesome Kamma have wholesome roots, such as non-attachment, non-aversion, and understanding. I call this the faultless zone, because the Kamma seeds that these mind moments create are faultless. As you can see, all Kamma creating mind moments have roots, either unwholesome roots or wholesome roots. Here are the 2 types of mind moments that are the effect of past Kamma: sensing mind moments and life continuum mind moments. you will notice that the sensing mind moments are either the result of past unwholesome karma or the result of past wholesome karma. As I mentioned earlier, an odor of garbage is a condition for a nose consciousness mind moment that is the effect of some past unwholesome karma to ripen. Similarly, the odor of coffee is a condition for a nose consciousness mind moment that is the effect of some past wholesome karma to ripen. Sensing mind moments are without roots. In other words, attachment or aversion do not arise at the precise moment of sensing, but attachment or aversion can arise during the reaction to what is sensed, in the mind moments that create new karma seeds. Finally, the last two types of mind moments, the sense-door decision and mind-door decision. These two mind moments are unrelated to karma. They do not create new karma, and they are not the effect of past karma. These two mind moments are also without roots. In other words, attachment or aversion do not arise as part of the decision, but attachment or aversion can arise during the reaction to what is sensed, in the mind moments that create new karma. Now, let's look at how seeing happens, the sequence of mind moments that make up a sense-door process. There are many life continuum mind moments before the sense-door process starts. Life continuum mind moments fill in the gaps between processes. Then there is a sense-door decision mind moment, a mind moment that is unrelated to karma. This mind moment decides which door should be opened, eye door, ear door, nose door, tongue door, body door. The decision is usually based on which sense object is knocking the loudest at the sense door. In other words, which sense object is most prominent at that moment. Because in our example, we are looking at a seeing process, the sense door decision will open the eye door. In other words, the mind will now flow towards the retina. Next is the sensing mind moment, such as eye consciousness, which is the effect of past karma. This is the consciousness that arises dependent on eye and visible forms. If it's a pleasant object, this is an opportunity for past wholesome karma to ripen. If it is an unpleasant object, this is an opportunity for past unwholesome karma to ripen. According to the Abhidhamma, the eye consciousness mind moment actually arises at the retina. So when the sutta says eye and visible forms, what is meant by eye is actually the retina. Next is the important mind-door decision, which is unrelated to karma. This mind moment determines how the mind will react to the sense object. Should the mind proceed to the danger zone or proceed to the faultless zone? This is the key decision, and it is unrelated to karma. Later, I will explain what does influence the mind-door decision. Decisions are not the effect of past karma and do not generate new karma themselves. It is what happens after the decision that generates new karma. Next are 7 karma-creating mind moments. If the mind-door decision had steered the mind into the faultless zone, wholesome karma is created. If the mind-door decision had steered the mind into the danger zone, unwholesome karma is created. Notice that you use up 1 karma seed during the sensing experience, but create 7 new karma seeds. Finally, there are many life continuum mind moments after the sense-door process ends. Life continuum mind moments fill in the gaps between processes. Now, let's take a look at how a mind-door process works. The mind-door process is similar to the sense-door process, except that it starts with a mind-door decision. The mind-door decision mind moment disrupts the flow of life continuum and conditions the arising of karma-creating mind moments. Most of the new karma is created by mind-door processes. Perceiving, thinking about, and proliferating are all mind-door processes. A sense-door process is followed by many thousands of mind-door processes, so you can use up 1 karma seed during the sense-door process, but create many thousands of new karma seeds during the subsequent mind-door processes. So using simple arithmetic, you can never use up all the karma seeds that you've created. The route decision that contributed to the car accident was the cumulative effect of millions of mind-door decision mind moments. None of them are related to karma. By looking at how the mind works at a microscopic level, we can see that our decisions are not related to karma. Remember the email at the beginning of this talk? Decisions about what job we're in and who we marry also have nothing to do with karma. Later, I will explain what does influence the mind-door decision mind moment, what influences our decisions. But I'll tell you now, it's not Kamma. So what conclusions can we make about the sense door process and the mind door process? The key decision is, should I proceed to the danger zone or to the faultless zone? And this decision is unrelated to Kamma. Most of the new Kamma seeds are created by the mind door process during the mental activities of perceiving, thinking about, and proliferating. We can never use up all the Kamma that we've created. Now, let's discuss the death and rebirth process and start by referencing a sutta. There is the case where a person takes a life, takes what is not given, engages in illicit sex, lies, speaks divisively, speaks abusively, engages in idle chatter, is covetous, malevolent, and holds wrong views. After death, he reappears in the woeful states. So the sutta says that bad people go to woeful states. Pretty much what we'd expect. But sometimes good things happen to bad people, and this sutta explains why. But there is also the case where a person takes a life, does all those bad things, holds wrong views, yet after death he reappears in the heavenly world. In this case, either the person had previously performed wholesome karma, or at the time of death he adopted right views. Because of that, after death, he reappears in the heavenly world. Here, the Buddha talked about the importance of the last thought moment in directing rebirth. But as for the results of taking life, doing all those bad things, holding wrong views, he will feel them in this lifetime, in the next lifetime, or some lifetime following that. So the sutta says that the unwholesome karma seeds from doing bad things stay with us, waiting for suitable conditions to ripen in the future. Now, let's take a look at the death and rebirth process from the Abhidhamma perspective. The last thought of the old existence creates karma. This may be weighty karma, death proximate karma, habitual karma, or reserve karma. Weighty karma arises at the time of death if one has committed one of the 5 heinous acts of killing one's father, killing one's mother, killing an arahant, wounding a Buddha, or maliciously causing a split in the Sangha. Weighty karma guarantees rebirth in hell and also blocks the possibility of attaining sainthood or jhana in that lifetime. King Ajatasattu had killed his father to take over the throne. The Buddha delivered a sutta to King Ajatasattu, and after the king had left, the Buddha said, if King Ajatasattu had not killed his father, King Ajatasattu would have attained sainthood while listening to that discourse. The commentaries explain that King Ajatasattu was guaranteed a rebirth in hell for his next existence because he had killed his father, but in some future existence would become enlightened. There is also weighty wholesome karma. Specifically, if you die while in a jhana meditative state, then you are guaranteed to be reborn into one of the higher realms. I am assuming that weighty karma will not apply to any of us, so the destination of our next rebirth is not guaranteed, but rather there's an element of chance involved. If weighty karma does not apply, then death proximate karma is the next most likely karma to direct our rebirth. Death proximate karma is karma arising shortly before the moment of death. If you are with a dying person, try to influence their death proximate karma by reminding them of the good things that they have done in their life. My grandmother was a nurse, and I kept reminding her of the patients that she had helped. My mother was a school teacher, and I reminded her of the students that she had helped. Uncle Pham was my first Dhamma teacher in Malaysia, and I saw him shortly before he passed away. I said, Uncle Pham, I'm looking forward to attending your next Dhamma talk. If the dying person is a Buddhist, you may want to bring a monk to see them, put a Buddha Rupa on their bedside table, or play a chanting CD for them, anything to lift their spirits. Even if they are in a coma or under medication, assume that the dying person is aware of what is happening around them. A few years ago, I was at a Buddhist conference in Shah Alam, and Ajahn Brahm spoke on euthanasia. He told a story of a woman in Singapore a few years earlier who had been in a coma. In front of the patient, the doctor asked the son if they should pull the plug, but the son did not agree. A few weeks later, the woman came out of the coma and made an almost complete recovery. The woman actually happened to be in the audience and went onto the stage. She talked about being fully aware of what the doctor was saying in front of her and her frustration at not being able to tell her son, "Don't pull the plug." It was very impactful. To avoid an unwholesome death proximate karma, do not stress a dying person. If you want to cry, do it outside the room rather than in front of the dying person. Help the dying person to overcome their own fear and attachment by encouraging them to have a positive and peaceful mind. If the dying person is your parent, reassure them that they need not worry about you. If there is no strong death proximate karma, then habitual karma will likely arise. As its name implies, habitual karma arises from a repetitive action such as regularly meditating. A meditation teacher once mentioned, when facing pain during meditation, you should consider it to be a rehearsal for your last thought. You may be experiencing pain during your last moments, so developing a habit of applying mindfulness rather than aversion when experiencing pain could be beneficial. Finally, if there is no weighty karma, no strong death proximate karma, and no strong habitual karma, then some random karma can arise in the last thought moment. There is a story in the commentaries about a virtuous monk, Tissa. When Tissa died, the Buddha told the other monks to wait 7 days before distributing Tissa's possessions to other members of the Sangha. After 7 days had passed, the other monks asked the Buddha why it was necessary to wait 7 days in this case. The Buddha explained that Tissa was attached to his robe, and because of his unwholesome death proximate karma, Tissa had been reborn as a flea living in the robe. If another person had touched the robe, the flea would have become agitated. However, because nobody had touched the robe, the flea's mind was calm, and when the flea died after 7 days, it was reborn as a deva because of the wholesome reserve karma accumulated by Tissa. Here is an analogy to reflect the order of ripening of karma in the last thought moment. Suppose that many cattle are kept in a shed for the night. In the morning, the door of the shed is open to let the cattle go out to the pasture. Now, which one will go out first? If there is a leader among them that everyone respects, this one will walk majestically to the door and go out first. This is weighty karma. If there is no leader, the one nearest the door will go out first. This is death proximate karma. Sometimes a vigilant one who has regularly noticed the time at which the shed is opened may walk to the door just before it's opened and goes out first. This is habitual karma. Sometimes an unexpected frail one, being pushed by stronger ones, may come out of the shed first. This is reserve karma. The last thought of the old existence is followed by one final life continuum mind moment. This is the last mind moment to be supported by the existing physical body. Subsequent mind moments will be supported by the new physical body. So while the physical body changes at the moment of rebirth, the mind with its associated karma flows from one existence to the next. Let me give you an analogy from the commentaries. Suppose that a candle flame is burning. 1 hour later, we can say that the candle flame is still burning. But looking at the situation in more detail, at each moment, the flame is burning up different particles of wax, different particles of the wick, different particles of oxygen. The wax, the wick, and the oxygen are different from moment to moment, so the flame is different at each moment. But each moment of flame links together in a continuum, so we can say it's the same flame. The arising of the flame depends on many conditions: wax, wick, oxygen, and the previous moment of flame. In this analogy, wax is the physical body, the wick are the sense organs, the eye, the ear, and so on, and the oxygen are the sense objects, visible forms, sounds, and so on. Flame is consciousness. Do you remember the sutta that said, dependent on eye and visible forms, eye consciousness arises? Well, dependent on the wick and oxygen, the flame arises. Imagine that we use the flame from this candle to light another candle, and the flame on the old candle goes out. Is the new flame dependent on the old flame for its arising? Yes. Is the new flame the same as the old flame? Well, yes, because it belongs to the same continuum, and no, because it's associated with a new candle. New candle means a new physical body, in other words, rebirth. So while the physical body changes, the mind with its associated karma flows from one existence to the next. Okay, let's return to that simplified death and rebirth process. All of the life continuum mind moments in the new existence are the effect of karma from the last thought of the old existence. This is called rebirth linking karma. The new life continuum has a white filling to indicate that it is a new existence. In the old existence, mind moments had a blue filling. According to Theravada Buddhism, rebirth is immediate. We must be reborn into one of the 31 realms, and there is no intermediate existence. A lifespan in the new existence may be brief, but it must be in one of the 31 realms. So what conclusions can we make about the death and rebirth process? If you are with a dying person, try to comfort their mind and remind them of the good things that they have done. Practice meditation now to prepare yourself for your last thought process. Do lots of meritorious deeds to improve your odds of rebirth in a happy destination. Now, let's look at the relationship between rebirth linking karma from the old existence and the corresponding new realm of existence, starting with rebirth into the woeful states. This table lists 10 possible rebirth linking karma from the old existence, which in this case are driven by unwholesome mind moments from the danger zone. A lay follower should not engage in 5 types of businesses. Which 5? Business in weapons, business in human beings, business in meat, business in intoxicants, and business in poison. This is the Buddhist definition of wrong livelihood. But even if your profession is not on this list, if you steal, cheat, or lie, these actions can still cause rebirth in a woeful state. The second column of this table shows the new realm of existence, which in this case are the full woeful states, hell, animal, peta, and asura. So the first column is the cause, and the second column is the effect. Returning to the first column of rebirth linking karma, the commentaries give conditions so that the unwholesome karma is completed. Completed means strong enough to cause rebirth in a woeful state. Not all unwholesome karma is strong enough to result in rebirth in a woeful state. For example, enjoying my coffee is not going to drag me to hell. There are 10 possible rebirth linking karma that can lead to rebirth in the woeful states listed on the previous slide. The first 3 of these are karma completed by body. They are killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. For each of these, there are 5 conditions that must be met for the karma to be strong enough to work as rebirth linking karma. Let me talk a bit more about killing. The commentary mentions a blind monk who inadvertently stepped on insects while doing walking meditation. The Buddha explained that the monk had done nothing wrong because there was no awareness of the existence of the insects and no intention to kill. There was karma associated with stepping, but not the karma associated with killing. Buying meat at the grocery store or ordering meat from the menu of a restaurant are not killing, because there's no intention to have an animal killed specifically for you. On the other hand, it is considered killing if you order fresh seafood at a restaurant that keeps live seafood in tanks. The Buddha did allow monks to eat meat and fish, so long as the monk does not hear or see the killing and does not suspect that the meat or fish was killed for the purpose of feeding monks. Both the judge who issues a death sentence and the executioner who performs the act are guilty of killing. Suicide, euthanasia, mercy killing, and abortion are all considered to be killing. There is no fault in killing plants, bacteria, or germs because they do not have consciousness and are therefore not considered to be living beings. Monks should not cut down plants, but this is to avoid causing any inconvenience to devas who might be living there. It's quiz time! Please take a moment and think about how you would answer each of these questions related to stealing. You are stopped for speeding. You pay a small bribe to the police officer to avoid a ticket. Who is guilty of stealing, you or the police officer? Is it considered to be stealing if you buy something in another country to avoid paying duty and then do not declare it when you return home? Is it stealing if you mistakenly take an umbrella that actually belongs to someone else? Here is how I would answer these questions. I hope you scored 100%. Now, on to the karma created by speech that can lead to rebirth in the woeful states. There are 4 karma completed by speech: lying, slander, harsh speech, and idle talk. This slide lists the conditions that must be met for the Kamma to be strong enough to be working as rebirth-linking Kamma and cause rebirth in the woeful states. Let's first consider the act of lying. Notice that it's not necessary for the other person to believe you for it to be considered to be lying. Another quiz. Please take a moment and think about how you would answer each of these questions related to lying. You tell an untrue story as a joke. Is this lying? Is it okay to tell little white lies if your motivation for lying is good? For example, insincere flattery or telling a child that a bad thing will happen if they don't eat their vegetables? Here is how I would answer these questions. Again, I hope that you scored 100%. If a person feels no shame in telling a deliberate lie, there is no evil he will not do. Thus, Rahula, you should train yourself. I will not tell a deliberate lie, even in jest. This is an extract from the same sutta that I mentioned earlier, the sutta that was given by the Buddha to his 7-year-old son. A Scottish poet once wrote, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive." One small white lie leads to a second lie, and that leads to another lie, and before we know it, we have a habit of lying. Let's now look at idle talk in a bit more detail. Here is the definition of idle talk from the suttas. Conversation about kings, robbers, ministers of state, armies, alarms, battles, food and drink, clothing, furniture, garlands, scents, relatives, vehicles, villages, towns, cities, the countryside, women and heroes, the gossip of the street and the well, tales of the dead, tales of diversity, the creation of the world and of the sea, talk of whether things exist or not. In Pali, this is called animal talk because it is lowly and moves horizontally, not at all conducive to spiritual development. Basically, this covers almost everything that we read in the newspaper, surf online, see on TV, or discuss in the coffee shop. I have been on retreat for the past couple of months, so I haven't really been following the news. It's been great. My mind is not agitated by political scandals, and I definitely haven't been keeping up with the Kardashians or any of the Hollywood gossip. So what is non-idle talk? Talk on modesty, on contentment, on seclusion, on non-entanglement, on arousing persistence, on virtue, on concentration, on discernment, on release, and on the knowledge and vision of release. Basically, Dhamma talks. All right, we've covered the 3 unwholesome Kamma completed by body, killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. We have covered the 4 unwholesome Kamma completed by speech, lying, slander, harsh speech, and idle talk. Now, let's finish with the 3 unwholesome Kamma completed by thought. They are covetousness, ill will, and wrong view, and this slide shows the conditions that must be met for the unwholesome Kamma to be strong enough to work as rebirth-linking Kamma and lead to rebirth in the woeful states. Notice that being angry with another person will not take you to hell unless you wish that they were dead, but wanting the cockroach in your kitchen to be dead might take you to hell. And hopefully this talk will dispel any wrong views about Kamma. Let's now look at wholesome Kamma, leading to rebirth as a human or deva. So how to be reborn as a human or a deva? Basically, actively avoid the 10 things that can cause rebirth in the woeful states. But it must be active, not good enough to lie in bed all day and think, hey, I didn't kill anything today, so I deserve to go to heaven. If you see a mosquito on your arm, gently blow it away with compassion. If you see a cockroach in the kitchen, catch it and release it outside, saying, may you be well and happy, and please don't come back. There is an interesting sutta that ranks wholesome deeds. It starts with the merit associated with offering dana. This sutta stresses that what is important is not the value of what is offered, but rather the intention of the giver and the spiritual qualities of the recipient. Ordinary dana is when food or robes are offered to a specific monk. For example, if you go to the temple and say, Chief, I would like to invite you for a house dana, then this is ordinary dana because you have specified that Chief was invited. On the other hand, if you go to the temple and say to the chief, please ask some monks to come for a house dana, then this is a dana to the Sangha because you did not specify which monks were invited. According to this sutta, dana to the Sangha is even much more meritorious than offering dana to a Buddha. Normally, when you offer a robe, you are offering to a specific monk, and so this is an ordinary dana. However, during the annual Katina ceremony, your robe is offered to the entire Sangha, and so this is far more meritorious than offering to a specific monk, even more meritorious than offering a robe to the Buddha. According to the sutta, the next two steps of taking the 3 refuges and taking the 5 precepts are even more meritorious than dana. The sutta mentions that taking refuges and precepts must be done with a confident mind, not just blind recitation. Of course, meditation brings the highest merits, and this is why the little monk is meditating. Notice the progression from giving, or dana, to morality, or sila, to mental cultivation, or bhavana. Before going further, we need to talk some more about roots. Let us first talk about roots in Kamma-creating mind moments. Kamma-creating mind moments arise either in the danger zone with unwholesome roots or in the faultless zone with wholesome roots. Let's first look at the danger zone. We have already talked about these mind moments. They can lead to rebirth in the woeful states. All of these mind moments include the root of delusion. Some of these mind moments include either the root of attachment or the root of aversion. So the mind moments in the danger zone can either have one root, delusion only, or 2 roots, delusion with either attachment or aversion. Rebirth as a human or deva is the result of Kamma creating wholesome mind moments in the faultless zone. These can either be 2-rooted or 3-rooted. 2-rooted mind moments include the roots of non-attachment and non-aversion. 3-rooted mind moments include the roots of non-attachment, non-aversion, and understanding. Non-attachment is not merely the lack of attachment. It is the active form, such as generosity and renunciation. Similarly, non-aversion is not merely the lack of aversion. It is the active form, such as compassion, patience, and loving kindness. Previously, I showed a table that listed the unwholesome rebirth-linking Kamma from the old existence and the new realm of existence, which in that case were the full woeful states. Now, we are going to build a table that lists the wholesome rebirth-linking Kamma from the old existence and the corresponding new realm of existence for human and deva rebirth. Human and deva rebirth is always the result of wholesome rebirth-linking Kamma from the old existence. This table shows 3 options. The first option is 2-rooted inferior wholesome Kamma. This is the worst possibility. The third option is 3-rooted superior wholesome Kamma. This is the best possibility. The second option is in between. Not quite as good as the third option, either because it's lacking a root or because the Kamma is inferior rather than superior. Do you remember the mother and her child offering a spoonful of rice? With all of the actions that the mother and the child perform during their lifetimes, it's highly unlikely that that offering of a spoonful of rice acts as rebirth-linking Kamma, but if it does, then rebirth would be as a human or a deva. The mother's motivation was based on the right thing to do, in other words, spiritual development. This is giving with understanding, and so the mother's wholesome Kamma included 3 roots: non-attachment, non-aversion, and understanding. On the other hand, the child gave the spoonful of rice because it was a traditional thing to do. This is blind giving without understanding. And so the child's wholesome Kamma included 2 roots: non-attachment and non-aversion. I also briefly mentioned superior Kamma and inferior Kamma when talking about the mother and her child. The mother reflects joyfully before, during, and after giving, and this created superior wholesome Kamma. On the other hand, the child hesitated before giving, was distracted during giving, or later regretted giving, and this created inferior wholesome Kamma. So when the child offered a spoonful of rice, it created weak, 2-rooted, inferior wholesome Kamma. This is the first option. And when the mother offered the spoonful of rice, it created strong, 3-rooted, wholesome Kamma. This is the third option. Now, let's look at the life continuum mind moments for humans and devas. It's not just the Kamma-creating mind moments that have roots. The life continuum mind moments for humans and devas can also have roots. Life continuum mind moments with 2 wholesome roots, non-attachment and non-aversion, are for humans and devas who are less spiritually oriented. These humans and devas are unable to attain jhana meditative states or sainthood in that lifetime. Life continuum mind moments with three wholesome roots, non-attachment, non-aversion, and understanding, are for humans and devas who are more spiritually oriented. These humans and devas are able to attain jhana meditative states or sainthood in that lifetime. Actually, the fact that you have the interest to listen to this talk suggests to me that your life continuum mind moments have three roots. Congratulations! You can attain jhana or sainthood in this lifetime. So for humans and devas, what is the relationship between rebirth linking Kamma from the old existence and the new realm of existence? According to Buddhist cosmology, there is the human realm and then 6 deva realms above us. The deva realm immediately above us is called the heaven of 4 great kings. Looking at the first row, in the unlikely event that the child's weak, two-rooted, inferior, wholesome Kamma plays the role of rebirth linking, rebirth would be as a congenitally disabled human or heaven of 4 great kings deva. Congenitally disabled means that from the moment of conception they might be deaf or blind. Looking at the third row, in the event that the mother's strong, three-rooted, superior wholesome Kamma plays the role of rebirth linking, rebirth would be as a spiritually oriented human or in one of the 6 deva realms. I say spiritually oriented because the life continuum mind moment would have 3 roots. Here is an interesting sutta about devas about to pass away from a heavenly realm. When a deva is about to pass away, the other devas encourage him, saying, "Go to a good destination. Having gone to a good destination, gain that which is good to gain. Become established in that which is good to gain." It is human existence that is reckoned by the devas as a good destination. Acquiring faith in the Dhamma is gaining that which is good to gain. So according to the Buddha, devas understand that it is good karma for them to be reborn as a human. Does it not seem a bit strange to you that devas want to be reborn as a human? It's because spiritual development in the human realm is easier since the first noble truth, the noble truth of suffering, is quite apparent. So let us not waste this opportunity that we have been given with a human rebirth. Finally, beings in the Brahma realms experience meditative jhana states for a very long time. They have lifespans measured in eons. An eon is the time for the universe to go through Big Bang, expansion, contraction, and then Big Crunch. It takes many billions of years. This concludes the discussion on rebirth linking Kamma and the new realm of existence. We have covered rebirth and momentary sense experience. Now let us turn to some living parts of the body. According to the Abhidhamma, our body includes 4 types of matter. There is matter created by Kamma. This matter is the only type of matter that includes the life faculty. These are the living parts of the body. There is matter created by nutrition. This comes from the foods that we eat. There is matter created by the mind. Recently, scientists have shown that mindfulness can even slow the cell aging process, and stress actually impacts our DNA. Mindfulness is so important to the body. Finally, there is matter created by temperature. Temperature includes various forms of physical energy such as thermal, chemical, and electrical. Our health depends on our Kamma, our nutrition, our mind, and the physical energies in the body. In the Satipatthana Sutta, meditators are advised to reflect on the causes of the body, and the commentary lists these causes as Kamma, nutrition, mind, and temperature. Now let's look a little bit more detail at matter created by Kamma. Plants have biological life. Biological life is an amazingly complex combination of chemical processes without the involvement of Kamma or consciousness. Biological life is not created by Kamma. Biological life is created by temperature. And as I just mentioned, temperature includes various forms of energy such as thermal, chemical, and electrical. Only living beings have both biological life and life faculty. Biological life is very important. Researchers have used their understanding of the complex combination of chemical processes in the body, biological life, to develop new medicines to cure diseases. But no medicine can impact the life faculty. Life faculty is created by Kamma. Specifically, Life faculty is created and supported by the rebirth linking Kamma. Rebirth linking Kamma can be strengthened by supportive Kamma, weakened by obstructive Kamma, or cut off by destructive Kamma. So what parts of the body are created by Kamma and include life faculty? Eye sensitivity is the part of the retina that responds to light. It supports eye consciousness. Similarly, ear sensitivity is the part of the ear that supports ear consciousness, and so on. Other than the five senses, all other types of consciousness are supported by matter that the commentaries call heart base. Generic living group and gender do not support consciousness but include the life faculty. Generic living group and gender arise as appropriate in various parts of the body. So these are the three effects of Kamma: rebirth, momentary sense experience, and some living parts of the body. Now here is another question that I am commonly asked. Can doing meritorious deeds help my child to pass their exam? As you know, some temples offer blessing services for students before the exams. My opinion is possibly, but not because of Kamma. Everything that happens arises because of conditions, many conditions. Some of these conditions may be able to be influenced by the guardian devas. And the guardian devas rejoice when they see us, or they see our child, doing meritorious deeds. The guardian devas can't tell your child the answers, but they may be able to help calm your child's mind. Just as you rejoice when you see your child doing something meritorious, so too the guardian devas rejoice when they witness meritorious deeds. So when you do meritorious deeds, invite the guardian devas to rejoice. You never know when you might need their help. My advice regarding the guardian devas is to radiate loving kindness, metta, to them and invite them to rejoice in your meritorious deeds. Don't try to barter with them. I offered dana 3 times this week, so can you help my child pass their exam? Do meritorious deeds because it is the right thing to do. And if the guardian devas decide to help you, that's a bonus. The guardian devas might possibly be able to help you out with some worldly matters, but for spiritual development, and that's what's really important, look to the Buddha, just as the devas look to the Buddha for spiritual advice. Now here is a sutta that the Buddha delivered to the guardian devas. The city of Vesali was facing famine and sickness and asked the Buddha for help. The Buddha said, "Whatever spirits have gathered here, on the earth, in the sky, may you all be happy and listen intently to what I say. Thus, spirits, you should all be attentive. Show kindness to the human race. Day and night they give offerings, so, being heedful, protect them." So the Buddha gave the Ratana Sutta to the guardian devas and asked them to help the people of Vesali with their famine and sickness. Now, I would like to talk about a factor that is often confused with Kamma: accumulations, habits, tendencies, and affinities. A modern writer shared this proverb that I really like. Sow an act, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap a destiny. This proverb suggests the linkage between Kamma and accumulations, habits, tendencies, and affinities. Let's look at how accumulations, habits, tendencies, and affinities can affect our daily life. Growing up in Canada, I was raised Christian and I went to church most Sundays. I listened carefully to what was being said, and in my early teens, I decided that I did not feel comfortable with the church doctrine. I stopped going to church and I spent 5 years reflecting on, what do I believe? When I was 19, my ex-girlfriend's father asked me about my religious beliefs. He was a Christian minister, but very open-minded. I said, I've been thinking about this for 5 years, and I've never shared it with anyone. I then talked for 3 hours. When it was over, he commented, "When studying to become a minister, I took a course in comparative religions. What you have described is very close to Buddhism." I was shocked. I said, "Look, I've never met a Buddhist, and I've never actually read anything about Buddhism. I have a hard time believing that independently I came up with one of the world's major religions." He said, "I suggest you go to the library and get a book on Buddhism." This was before the internet. So as a teenager, I started reading books on Buddhism and realized that when I let my mind wander freely and go back to its natural home, it chose Buddhism. It was clear to me that I must have been a Buddhist in a previous life. I remember the first time that I attended an Abhidhamma class. After the class, I said to myself, I have absolutely no idea what the teacher was talking about, but I really liked it. I'm going to return. I think I must have studied Abhidhamma in a previous life as well. Musical talent can come from experience in a past life. For example, hours of practicing in a previous life can make a child prodigy in the next life. Similarly, a choice of profession can be influenced by past life experiences. Perhaps I was drawn to engineering because I was an engineer in a past existence. A couple asked the Buddha, how can we be together in our next life? The Buddha answered, strong alignment in faith, virtue, generosity, and understanding. Affinity for a religion, for an activity, or for a person can be explained based on what happened in a previous life. Perhaps your spouse in this life was your spouse in a previous life. Not because of karma, but because of accumulations, habits, tendencies, and affinities. Now, let me quote a verse from the Dhammapada and tell you the story behind it. A jealous, barren wife killed the children of the fertile wife. The two women were then reborn as a hen and a cat. They were next reborn as a leopard and a deer. They took turns killing each other's children. They were reborn as human, and the Buddha said to them, hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased. This is a natural law. Rebirth was due to Kamma. The meeting in multiple existences was due to affinity, and the ongoing jealousy and hatred was due to accumulation, habit, or tendency. Now here is another example of a misunderstanding about Kamma. After biting your lip 10,000 times, the irritated wife yells, can't you remember to put the toilet seat down when you're done? And another thing. The husband thinks, it's my karma to have a hypersensitive wife. And the wife thinks, it's my karma to have an insensitive husband. If the husband and the wife blame karma, the situation will never improve. Applying the perspective of accumulations, habits, tendencies, and affinities will provide a better approach. So the husband thinks, I have a deeply ingrained bad habit of leaving the toilet seat up. I need to change this bad habit. It will take commitment, mindfulness, and energy. And the wife thinks, I have an accumulated tendency to spin out of control when there is a trigger. This creates bad karma for me, it's not good for my health, and it's not going to be good for the relationship. I need to address this accumulated tendency. It will take commitment, mindfulness, and energy. Please notice that changing habits takes commitment, mindfulness, and energy. Here is a best practice that has been used to instill new positive habits. More than 10 years ago, when my kids were in Sunday school, they were given a book with pages for them to write down their positive experiences for 100 days. Reinforcing positive things by repeatedly being mindful of them turns positive things into positive habits. But to be honest with you, it's not just Sunday school kids who need to instill new positive habits. Let me now share with you one of my favorite suttas, in which the Buddha talked about his own spiritual development. Before I became enlightened, I decided to divide my thoughts into two types: wholesome thoughts that are good for me and good for others, and unwholesome thoughts that are bad for me and bad for others. I saw that whatever one pursues with thinking and pondering, that becomes the tendency of the mind. I saw that whatever one pursues with thinking and pondering, that becomes the tendency of the mind. That's a description of accumulations, habits, tendencies, and affinities. When unwholesome thoughts arose, I mindfully reflected, this is bad for me and bad for others. The unwholesome thoughts subsided. I simply abandoned them. When wholesome thoughts arose, I mindfully reflected, this is good for me and good for others. I should continue this for a long time. So I steadied, settled, unified, and concentrated the mind so that it would not be disturbed. This is simple, practical advice from the Buddha on how to deal with unwholesome and wholesome thoughts. Let me now present this sutta as a diagram. Things start with a trigger. The trigger is usually an idea, but sometimes a sense object. The mind experiences millions of triggers each second. The trigger initiates either a sense door process or a mind door process. Most of the time, it's a mind door process involved with perceiving, thinking, and mentally proliferating. Both of these processes involve the key mind or decision mind moment that steers the mind toward either the danger zone or the faultless zone. When the mind or decision is influenced by unwholesome tendencies, the mind can spiral downwards, dragging you down. Too often we spin out of control with negative thinking. When the mind is in the danger zone, unwholesome karma is created. The Buddha explained, whatever one pursues with thinking and pondering, that becomes the tendency of the mind. So not only does the mind moment in the danger zone create unwholesome karma, it also becomes a trigger for another mind door process. The mind door process in the danger zone also reinforces and strengthens unwholesome tendencies, perpetuating the negative spiral. The Buddha said that when you observe this happening in your mind, you should reflect, this is bad for me and bad for others. This reflection will help to break the spiral and help you to abandon these thoughts. Simple advice, but difficult to follow because the unwholesome tendencies are deeply ingrained. It takes commitment, mindfulness, and energy to follow this advice. You may fail the first 10 times, but keep the commitment, mindfulness, and energy, and you may succeed the 11th time. Sometimes the mind or decision directs the flow of the mind to the faultless zone. The mind moments in the faultless zone reinforce wholesome tendencies and act as further triggers. When the mind or decision is influenced by wholesome tendencies, the mind can spiral upwards, lifting you up. Too rarely do we nurture wholesome thoughts by letting the mind settle into them. The Buddha recommended that when the mind is wholesome, we should steady, settle, unify, and concentrate the mind so the mind is not disturbed and the wholesome mind moments last longer. Now, let's look at accumulations, habits, tendencies, and affinities in a little bit more detail. The cause that conditions accumulations, habits, tendencies, and affinities is strong past experience. What makes a past experience strong? Something that had an emotional impact, such as almost drowning, would be strong. Something done with a strong intention, such as making a vow, would be strong. Something done repeatedly, such as practicing piano or meditation, would be strong. The technical term used in the Abhidhamma for accumulations, habits, tendencies, and affinities is natural decisive support condition. I know, it sounds like the name of a healthcare product. Through natural decisive support condition, the current mind moment is influenced by accumulations, habits, tendencies, or affinities. This includes the key mind door decision. This is what drives all of the decisions that steer us through life, and this is why the little monk is here. The way that we react to things is determined by accumulations, habits, tendencies, or affinities. Let me repeat that because it is so important. Our decisions in life are not driven by karma, but rather our decisions are driven by our accumulations, habits, tendencies, and affinities. So if we want to improve ourselves or develop ourselves spiritually, we need to train ourselves. Train ourselves to diminish bad accumulations, bad habits, bad tendencies, and bad affinities. Train ourselves to nurture and reinforce good accumulations, good habits, good tendencies, and good affinities. People often confuse karma condition with natural decisive support condition, but they have a different cause and a different effect. The cause of karma condition is intention, and the cause of natural decisive support condition is strong past experience. The effect of karma condition is rebirth, momentary sense experience in some living parts of the body. The effect of natural decisive support condition is on the current mind moment, including the mind or decision mind moment. Some Buddhist teachers who have not studied Abhidhamma tend to combine these two concepts, but I feel that separating them leads to a clearer understanding. Your current situation arose mainly because of your rebirth situation, karma, and your decisions made in your life, natural decisive support. Improving your current situation depends mainly on decisions that you will make in your life, natural decisive support. So our current situation is largely based on decisions we made in the past. And our future situation is largely based on decisions we make in the present. Decisions come from natural decisive support condition, not from karma. I said your current situation arose mainly because of And improving your current situation depends mainly on, because there are many things that do not depend on karma and do not depend on your decisions, such as natural disasters, government policy, or a company going bankrupt. These are things that can have a big impact on you, but there is little that you can do about them. There are many things that impact you, but your decisions cannot impact. If you put your attention on things that you cannot control, then you are taking your attention away from things that are under your control. My advice is to focus on areas where your decisions can have an effect. Now, let's take a quick look at how Kamma and natural decisive support relate to dependent origination. You probably recognize this diagram. The 12 factors show how we are bound to the cycle of repeating rebirth. I'm not going to go into explaining these 12 factors. If I tried, we wouldn't get out of here until next Tuesday. There are just a couple of points that I want to make about this diagram related to Kamma and natural decisive support. The commentaries explain the 12 factors as covering 3 lifetimes: past life, present life, and future life. Past life causes impact present life effects, and present life causes impact future life effects. Links between lives are based on Kamma condition and natural decisive support condition. Kamma is accumulated, causing rebirth. Because of affinity, which is natural decisive support, one may be reborn into the same extended family or into the same culture. Remember the 2 women who took turns killing each other's children? If experiencing an object triggers craving, then we are caught. This decision is based on natural decisive support condition. For example, suppose I am meditating quietly and someone starts talking outside. My mind is instantly craving to hear new sounds. This habit of craving is very deeply ingrained in all of us. So how do we escape from this habit of craving? It starts by understanding the first noble truth, that birth leads to suffering. Concentration and vipassana lead to disenchantment and then dispassion. Disenchantment is the opposite of clinging, and dispassion is the opposite of craving. Okay, time for our final quiz. Consider if each of these 4 situations is due to Kamma and or natural decisive support. A wife runs away with another man because in a previous life her husband ran away with another woman. A person is born handicapped. A rich tycoon's wealth cannot last 3 generations. Someone wins a lottery. Okay, here's how I would answer these questions. Once again, I hope that you scored 100%. I would like to say a few words about good luck. At the time of the Buddha, many people were superstitious, and the Buddha was asked about what brings the most good luck. The Buddha turned this question around and said that leading a proper life leads to good luck. The first few items that the Buddha listed as part of leading a proper life were not to associate with the wrong people, to associate with the right people, and to honor those worthy of honor. The Buddha's focus is always on spiritual development, not on winning lotteries. Okay, now for my closing remarks. People often blame Kamma as an excuse not to look more deeply into the true root cause of the problem. Focusing on Kamma can make you fatalistic. Oh, it's my Kamma. Don't be fatalistic. As we have seen, Kamma impacts rebirth, momentary sense experience, and some living parts of the body. That's all. Actually, that's not quite technically correct. When a saint experiences the bliss of Nibbana, this is called fruit consciousness, and this is the effect of Kamma. So if there are any saints in the room, I apologize, but since you're saints, I'm sure you're going to forgive me. If we want to improve ourselves, we need to unlearn bad habits, nurture and reinforce good habits. We are truly creatures of habit. The spiritual life is lived to abandon and eradicate the 7 unwholesome underlying tendencies. What's 7? The underlying tendencies to sensual lust, aversion, views, doubt, conceit, lust for existence, and ignorance. Spiritual development, or any form of self-improvement, is replacing bad habits with good habits. Unlearning bad habits and reinforcing good habits is training the mind. It takes commitment, mindfulness, and energy. Commitment, strong and unwavering. Mindfulness in daily life, not just on retreat. Energy, continuous, consistent effort. Our spiritual development, the reason that we're here, does not come from our karma. Our spiritual development comes from our accumulations, habits, tendencies, and affinities. Now, when I say the reason that we are here, it covers both the meaning of our existence and why we came to BGF this morning. So focus on working on your accumulations, habits, tendencies, and affinities by training the mind with commitment, mindfulness, and energy. Precepts, rules of training, focus on reducing bad accumulations, bad habits, bad tendencies, and bad affinities. So take precepts regularly and with your heart to make them a strong conditioning factor. Dhamma practice, such as listening to Dhamma talks, dana, chanting, and especially meditation, increase good accumulations, good habits, good tendencies, and good affinities. So do Dhamma practices regularly and with your heart to make them a strong conditioning factor. This slide gets two little monks because I mentioned meditation. As a bonus, you'll also generate wholesome karma. So if you don't escape rebirth in this life, at least you will get another chance with a good rebirth for your next life. Now, my conclusions to this presentation. Hopefully by now you have memorized this slide that lists the cause of karma and the effects of karma. People often blame karma as an excuse not to look more deeply into the true root cause of the problem. Take precepts regularly and with your heart to make them a strong conditioning factor. Do Dhamma practices regularly and with your heart to make them a strong conditioning factor. It's possible that your concerns are less spiritual and more worldly, things such as a toxic work environment, a frustrating spouse, or a toilet seat. If this is the case, then my advice is quite similar. People often blame karma as an excuse not to look more deeply into the true root cause of the problem. Don't be fatalistic. Look more deeply into the true root causes of your problems. Look at your situation from the perspective of habits. Are there bad habits that you need to uproot? Are there good habits that you need to nurture, reinforce, and develop further? In the past, what strategies have worked for you when dealing with habits? I am sure that whatever strategy works for you will involve commitment, mindfulness, and energy. A final story. A rich man had 4 wives. The 4th wife. He loved her, but he was always concerned that she would leave him. The 3rd wife. They loved each other, and she was his trusted, loyal confidant. The 2nd wife. He loved her the most, and he always took very good care of her. The 1st wife. He ignored her. He was too busy with the other 3 wives. On his deathbed, he asked, "Who will follow me?" The 4th wife said, "I'll find someone else." The 3rd wife said, "I can follow you only until the grave." The 2nd wife said, "No way, I cannot." The 1st wife said, "Of course, I will always be with you." So who were these 4 wives? His wealth, his family and friends, his body, and his karma. Don't ignore your karma. Take precepts regularly and with your heart. Do Dhamma practices regularly and with your heart. This will give you good karma in this lifetime and establish habits that create good karma in future lifetimes too. Of course, you can't have a presentation without one cat photo. I hope that today's talk has helped you by clearing up some misconceptions about karma. May you be well and happy.